Alright, much brew! Playing some more Lantern Control in Modern, trying to make our opponents miserable. And this hand's pretty good. Ancient Stirrings to find more mana, and then we got the Bridge. So I think we just lead on Sanctum and Ancient Stirrings. Interesting. I like Mox Opal best, but we aren't guaranteed to be able to turn it on right away. 1 artifact, 2 artifact, 3 artifact. So if we don't draw land, it'll take us 2 turns to turn it on, and next turn we're just like Pixising. So I think in that scenario, we're just going to take Ether Hub. I think that's fine. Put the rest to the bottom. This lets us like Pixis or Ancient Stirrings plus Inquisition next turn, which is probably our best bet. Breeding Pool for our opponent, and Search for Tomorrow's suspended. Not sure how this one works. Well, in that case, let's Ether Hub, get an energy. So probably what we want is to mill Valakuts and Scapeshifts. Inquisition, see what's in our opponent's hand. Terminate, Search for Tomorrow's, Cryptic, and Bring to Light. Alright, so we will take Search for Tomorrow's. And then I think we just Pixis here and pass the turn. There's Search for Tomorrow's. Ticking down. Polluted Delta. And opponent passes. So let's exile with Pixis. Who knows what we hit? There's a Ghoul Caller's Bell. We could use a Lantern. Lantern would be ideal. Well, let's Ghoul Caller's Bell first. And then Ancient Stirring, see if we can find a Lantern. No. Shredder, Ghoul Caller's Bell, Glimmer Void, Opal, Pixis. Well, I guess in that case we take Shredder, play Glimmer Void, play a Kodak Shredder. Opponent cracks Polluted Delta. Were they slow rolling a counter through all that? Steam Vents for our opponent untapped. Interesting. Maybe they really do have a counter. Our opponent drew a counter. It's a remand. Well, let's Pixis and Ghoul Caller's Bell. Alright, we milled a mountain. Not a Valakut, but still reasonable. Getting rid of mountains makes it harder for our opponent to win with Scapeshift. So Search comes down, gets a mountain. Things would be... Oh, there's a Valakut. That's sketchy. We draw land, so let's Kodak Shredder, Blooming Marsh. I don't know if there's a good Scapeshift target in this deck. Or not Scapeshift, a good Pithing Needle target. I guess Sakura Tribe Elder. Yeah, so we'll name Sakura Tribe Elder so they can't ramp with it. Pass the turn, so we are going to need to find a Ghost Quarter. And our opponent can kind of disrupt us with Cryptic to some extent. Plays the Swamp. Here comes a Bring to Light. What do they get here? Just a ramp spell to set up Scapeshift. Hunting Wilds. Yep. So our opponent gets a couple forests. Unfortunately, we don't have a Lantern. Well, let's exile with Pixis. Mill with Ghoul Caller's Bell. Mill our opponent with Kodak Shredder. Did not hit many lands. Playing Snaring Bridge, playing Venture's Fair, pass the turn, and see what happens. We might be dead to Scapeshift, assuming our opponent has enough mountains. 7 lands actually doesn't kill us. They need 1 more land, which might mean we get 1 more turn of milling, which could be a big deal. We don't know what we've exiled. There's Sakura Tribe Elder. Well, let's exile and mill and mill. Not hitting many mountains, unfortunately. Gain a life up to 21. Inquisition. Cryptic terminates, angers. Well, take the anger. Pass the turn. I'm expecting Cryptic, bounce, Needle, sack Elder, go for the Scapeshift win. The question is going to be, does our opponent have enough mountains? That is the question. Sacks the Elder. And we will be able to mill with Scapeshift on the stack. So if we can get rid of enough mountains, we might be able to fizzle the Scapeshift kill. We just have no way of knowing for sure. Well, opponent plays him out. That's a good sign that it was in their hand. Plays a Sakura Tribe Elder. Our opponent might not have enough left. So exile, mill our opponent. We gain a life. Well, Let's start with Pithing Needle on Secure Tribe Elder. Opponent has 2 Terminates in hand. So next up, we will Glintnest Crane. See if we can find a Lantern. Wow. Alright, well, no artifacts. Lands all to the bottom. Pass the turn. It's seeming likely that our opponent just doesn't have enough mountains left in their deck, or they don't think they do. Is it Charm? Draws and discards. Gets rid of the 2 Terminates. Are they going for it? There's a Scapeshift. Well, exile with Pixis. Mill with Ghoul Caller's Bell. Mill with Kodak Shredder. We hit a Stomping Ground there. And see what happens. Does our opponent have enough mountains in their deck to kill us, is the question. We don't know. There's 6 cards that are gone with Pixis, and we don't know what those are. I think this deck only plays about 10 mountains. Well, we're about to see. If this doesn't work out, then not much we can do about it. We were doing the best we could with no lantern, so we were just kind of random milling, which is still fine. Our opponent doesn't seem confident that they have the win here. Wow. Maybe they have more mountains left than we thought. It would be unfortunate if they had like 7 mountains in their bottom 21 cards. Whoo! Thank God. Oh, they were a mountain short. That Stomping Grounds that we milled with on the stack. Oh my goodness. That Stomping Grounds saved our life. 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, I guess they were 2 short, so we were good. That was just a desperation, last-ditch effort of our opponent. So this deck, they have counters and such. Surgical Extraction seems awesome if we can mill their key combo pieces. Like Valakut, it's going to be super hard for the deck to win. So that's one good option. Collective Brutality does well as a duress effect, so I like that. Crucible, I don't know if that's necessary. The big question is ley lines. Do we want ley lines? And I don't know the answer to that. It's maybe. I think things that we don't want. Abrupt Decay doesn't really do anything. So we can get rid of Abrupt Decays. The other question is, do we need to keep Ensnaring Bridges? Even though our opponent probably has like Obstinate Baloth in the sideboard. In their main deck, it's likely kicked Hunting Wilds, or Sakura Tribe Elder. So we don't need... Bridge isn't that important, but it's still probably somewhat important because we don't really have removal. So we could theoretically lose to a single Obstinate Baloth or something if we don't have a bridge. We could maybe go down a bridge. What do we cut for Leyline, though, is the question. Leyline does seem pretty solid. It starts on the battlefield, fizzles Valakut. I think we got to make room for Leyline. What we cut, I do not know. That's the other thing with Leyline is it could get stuck in our hand, but that's not really relevant. Can we cut a bridge? I think maybe we go 1 bridge and down the Glintnest Cranes and try it like this. Oh, all right. Still not 100% confident with my sideboarding plan with this deck, but that seems reasonable. They likely don't have Stony Silence, so they're going to have to use targeted removal, most likely, to kill our artifacts. They could have Shatterstorm. Luckily, we have a lot of discard, which should help. Seems like just being the deck that has like 8 or 7 Thought Seizes and a bunch of Collective Brutalities is decent. Well, this hand's not awesome, but we have a Lantern, a Kodak Shredder, and a Leyline, so I like that. Start with Leyline on the battlefield. Overgrown Tomb for our opponent, untapped. And their Search for Tomorrow suspended. Well, let's just Blooming Marsh and get Kodak Shredder out there first. Start the milling. Maybe that's a wrong choice when we could play Lantern, and Lantern is more important. But I do like being able to start milling our opponent. Another Search suspended. Steam Vents, tapped. Well, we're going to get down our Lantern anyway. So let's start the milling. Electrolyze, down. We play a Lantern of Insight. We have Inquisition. Opponent has a land. Play Mox Opal. Play Darkslick Shores. Add some mana. Play Mox Opal. Legend Rule our Mox Opal. So Lotus Petal Mox Opal. And then get down an Ensnaring Bridge. I guess we can let our opponent draw non-mountain lands. We're not going to keep them off lands. They have double search suspended, so it's not like we can really just totally stick them on mana. So we probably want to get more impactful targets, especially since we only have one mill effect right now. Opponent gets an island. Steam Vents we will mill, although it will get shuffled, but I don't mind getting rid of mountains. Getting rid of mountains is one of our best ways to fight this deck. Huntmaster of the Fells, okay. Well, let's mill the mountain. Opponent has Elder on top. Do we want to... Yeah, we can draw Inquisition, that's fine. Inventor's Fair on top. Let's just play the second bridge. Pass the turn. I don't mind drawing Inventor's Fair. Our opponent's Elder is going to get shuffled anyway, so we'll see what's on top after this shuffle. We don't really want our opponent to get Bring to Light, because that could get like Shatterstorm potentially, which would be very bad. Breeding Pool, we will let go. Okay, Ancient Grudge is a bit annoying. Looks like our opponent has Bring to Light in hand. If this gets Shatterstorm, then we are in trouble. Creeping Corrosion, pretty much the same deal. Let's mill Inventor's Fair, shuffle our library. Yeah, this is going to get us pretty good. Now we're getting beaten down by Huntmasters. We're down 2 Ensnaring Bridges. I guess lesson here is I probably should have kept 1 Ensnaring Bridge in our hand. Baloth in Breeding Pool. Alright, pass the turn. Well, bridge or bust. We got to draw the third bridge like this turn pretty much. So we had a good mill set up, but we didn't get much disruption, unfortunately. Exile Search for Tomorrow. Plays the land. Yeah, Bring to Light lets our opponent get the one-ofs. That does make this matchup sort of scary. There's a Baloth. Ancient Stirrings is sweet, but I don't know if it's sweet enough. Well, we take Blooming Marsh. I think Blooming Marsh is our best out, because Blooming Marsh means we could theoretically draw another Ancient Stirrings and use it to find Ensnaring Bridge next turn. So that gives us a slight, extremely slight out. And a temporary out, because our opponent will find Cryptic or something eventually. Down to 4, Huntmaster flips, puts us to 2, and we draw a Ghost Quarter, and that does it. Oh, yeah. Creeping Corrosion, very good against our deck. Is it even worth trying to fight? I mean, we can bring in Welding Jar, which stops 1. I mean, it protects... I mean, it's probably easier just to like, Thoughtseize or Collective Brutality away their Bring to Lights and keep them from doing it that way. There also, though, is... yeah, we probably need the bridge. There is also Ancient Grudge, which is good against what we're doing. Well, let's go back up the bridge. Try it like that. That might have went differently if I hadn't played the second bridge. I think that was where I went wrong there. Alright, we'll keep this. Not insane, but it's reasonable. Start with a Leyline on the battlefield. Then we cast Mox Opal, play Glimmer Void, and play Codex Shredder. Pass this a turn, and we can start milling our opponent. Watery Grave, tapped. Mill a Baloth. Sure. We get a Needle. Well, let's Needle Sakura Tribe Elder. Play another Codex Shredder. Pass the turn. Lantern of Insight would be helpful. Also just discard. Opponent plays a Forest. And passes. Well, mill our opponent. Breeding Pool, mill our opponent. Mountain. Ooh, there's Inventor's Fair. So play Inventor's Fair. This is actually shaping up a bit. 1, 2, 3. Play Ensnaring Bridge. Resolves. Pass the turn. And now we have Infernal Tutor online for next turn. Potentially. Opponent plays a Spellskite. Well, let's keep milling. Mill our opponent. Remand. Mill our opponent. Opponent cracks Polluted Delta. Guess they figure we might mill something they want. Breeding Pool tapped. Redirects to Spellskite. Okay. We gain a life. Blooming Marsh. Well, I mean, I think that we have to just get the Lantern here and hope that our opponent doesn't have the Creeping Corrosion in hand. So, Infernal Tutor. I mean, we could get discard, but I think it's more valuable to Lantern of Insight, because that'll hopefully set up discard for next turn. So play Lantern, and I guess we just pass? Do we let our opponent draw a Polluted Delta? I think that's fine, because we actually want to mill ourselves here if we can to find Thoughtseizes. Alright, Cryptic on top. Opponent plays Polluted Delta. If they have their sideboard, probably one of Creeping Corrosion in hand, then they got us. Opponent's passing. Ooh, cracks Polluted Delta. I'm going to shuffle away that Cryptic. Steam Vents. Untapped. Oh, geez. Hunting Wilds. Well, in this case, we are going to mill Valakut. Because that means if we find a surgical extraction, we can get rid of Valakuts altogether. We're also going to mill this Glimmer Void from our deck because we really don't want that. I think Thoughtseize might be our most ideal draw. Ooh, Slaughter Games. Well, let's target ourselves, mill Glimmer Void. Darkslick Shores, stop on our upkeep. We don't really want Darkslick Shores. So mill ourselves. Needle. Do we care about Slaughter Games? I guess it's not that bad. What does it get rid of that really matters? We already got our good stuff on the battlefield, so we might let it go. Yeah, let's mill ourselves. I really want a discard spell. Instead, it's a Mox Opal. Not super exciting. Alright, pass the turn. Opponent gets Slaughter Games. Has an Anger on top. We are fine with our opponent drawing Anger. Bring to Light is what we're afraid of, and we couldn't find a discard spell to get rid of it. Alright, Sakura Tribe Elder. Sakura Tribe Elder. Well, those aren't the cards we were afraid of. Maybe our opponent doesn't have it. Opponent passes. Well, we gotta stop on our upkeep. We are going to mill Leyline. We don't want a second Leyline. Still really want discard. Alright, Inquisition is close enough. Gain a life. Draw Inquisition. At least this gives us some information. So, Inquisition our opponent. Opponent remands. That's fine. They draw an Anger. Inquisition our opponent. Anger, Slaughter Games, and Scapeshift. Alright, so we take the Anger. We play Mox Opal, I think, to get empty-handed. Yeah, let's do that. Mox Opal, sack a Mox Opal, pass the turn. Well, we're in okay shape. We still have some good things that we'd like to draw into, but our opponent can't kill us right now because of Leyline of Sanctity. So even though they have the Scapeshift, we know they don't have Bring to Light. Shuffles into a mountain, that's fine. And a swamp on top, that is super fine. So our opponent can Slaughter Games us, but I don't know what they name that wins them the game. At this point, we basically want more mill effects to more effectively control the top of our opponent's deck. Does Slaughter Games say target opponent? I guess that's a good question. It could be possible that our opponent, would they Slaughter Games themselves just to shuffle? I don't know if you can target yourself with Slaughter Games, though. Opponent thinks about using Slaughter Games, decides against it. Well, we get to mill ourselves. We don't want Blooming Marsh. Ooh, Collector Brutality is... I guess that's fine. Yeah, we'll take it. So we get to gain a life with Inventor's Fair. We draw Collector Brutality. So duress our opponent. And we're just going to take Slaughter Games for now, because we can take Scapeshift next turn. The other thing we're kind of worried about is Ancient Grudge. So a second Lantern would actually be helpful against Ancient Grudge. Another Spellskite's fine. We'll let our opponent draw that. We might not even draw this Thoughtseize. Like, we can get rid of it, and that means our opponent killing Leyline doesn't kill us, but I think we can do better. So let's Kodak Shredder ourselves. Surgical Extraction, I do like. We will keep that, because that gets rid of Valakut once and for all. It also shuffles, but I think that's okay. So Surgical Extraction on Valakut. Scapeshift in hand. Our opponent has what to deal with us. They have some creatures. They have one Ancient Grudge, one Creeping Corrosion, and the Bring to Lights. So those are the ways that we can lose now. So get rid of Valakut, get rid of Valakut. Cryptics can bounce our stuff. Alright, well, Bring to Light on top. We're gonna mill Bring to Light. That's scary. Cryptic on top, I think that's okay. Since Scapeshift is not an out now for our opponent, Cryptic doesn't seem super scary. Like, the best it can do is, like, bounce an Ensnaring Bridge for a turn or something. I mean, it's worth being aware of, but I don't think it's deadly. And now we can let opponent draw lands all they want. Mill ourselves. Get rid of this Sanctum. Inquisition. We actually don't want Inquisition, so let's mill Inquisition. Alright, we'll take a land. Not great, but better than Inquisition at this point. There's another bridge. So Darkslick Shores, go. Opponent's going to draw a Stomping Grounds and another land on top. Plays the Stomping Grounds. I guess we can play a backup bridge. I think that's fine. If our opponent wants to counter it, they can counter it. So Ensnaring Bridge number 2. This means with 2 bridges, it means that Cryptic isn't a way to get out from under bridge. They can't just bounce Cryptic, attack with a bunch of stuff, and win. So pass the turn. Opponent gets a Steam Vents, has a Polluted Delta on top. Fetch lands are the best lands for our opponent, since it gives them a shuffle and can kind of disrupt what we're doing. Mill away our forests that we don't want. We will keep Ghoul Caller's Bell. So gain a life, draw the Ghoul Caller's Bell, play the Ghoul Caller's Bell. See if this draws out the Cryptic. Kind of like this Surgical Extraction. Opponent's thinking on it. They might actually counter the Ghoul Caller's Bell. They choose not to. Alright, pass the turn. Opponent's going to get a fetch land, but that's fine. Search for Tomorrow is on top. Kind of another shuffle. Plays the fetch land. Let's mill our opponent some. Get rid of Search for Tomorrows. Get rid of Search for Tomorrows. There's the Ancient Grudge. Well, I guess we got to mill the Ancient Grudge. Well, let's draw the Surgical first. So let's mill the Ancient Grudge. Pass the turn. Actually, we should probably mill Cryptic too. Mill Cryptic. This can force our opponent to use the Cryptic in their hand with the Surgical Extraction. Bring to Light. This is scary. Mill Bring to Light. Opponent's going to shuffle. Sakura Tribe Elder on top. We're going to mill Sakura Tribe Elder, unfortunately. Alright, another Sakura Tribe Elder. So, pass the turn. Opponent untaps. Draws Sakura Tribe Elder. Plays Sakura Tribe Elder. Well, let's go for Surgical Extraction on the Cryptic. So this forces our opponent to use the Cryptic, or they lose it. And if they draw, they only get a Scapeshift, which isn't relevant anymore. We're going to draw a Mox Opal, which we don't really want. Let's see what our opponent does here. Gonna bounce our Leyline. Okay. Sure. I guess that lets our opponent attack. Gets in. They still have Scapeshift in hand. Let's mill Mox Opal. We'll draw Academy Ruins. I like that. Play Academy Ruins. Replay Leyline. And pass the turn. Let our opponent draw the Scapeshift. Academy Ruins really undoes this Ancient Grudge. Is it Charm on top for our opponent? Opponent can't really attack. Well, let's mill our opponent. Another Spellskite on top. Let's mill both. I think this is fine. Stomping Grounds, that's fine. Collective Brutality is good. But we are going to just put back a Pixis that we milled. Play Pixis. Pass the turn. So as long as we keep our opponent from drawing their Creeping Corrosion, I think this game is over. Bring to Light on top. Well, we got to get rid of that, because that finds Creeping Corrosion. Stomping Grounds for our opponent. Scapeshift, sure. This might be the I give up play by our opponent. They might just be using this to shuffle, essentially. Search for Tomorrow's on top. Well, let's exile. And mill our opponent, and mill our opponent, down to 13 cards. Bring to Light on top, so we'll have to get rid of that. We will draw Ancient Stirrings, I think that's fine. Let's exile the Bring to Light. Huntmaster, well, let's Ancient Stirrings, see what we find. Another Lantern, Ghoul Caller's Bell. We'll take back up Lantern. I think we're pretty safe as long as we don't lose our information advantage. Play Lantern. Pass the turn. And we're actually fine with our opponent playing Huntmaster. Huntmaster isn't going to do it here. We're pretty close to just milling our opponent out. Mill Electrolyze. Mill Bring to Light. That might be our opponent's final out. Mill both. Get back. I don't even know if it matters. Let's not even do that. Let's just untap. On our upkeep, we will Ghoul Caller's Bell. We'll keep Kodak Shredder. Gain a life. Play the Kodak Shredder. Mill our opponent. Can we win here? I don't think quite. Mill our opponent. 1, 2. Yeah, we gotta wait one more turn. So we'll let our opponent draw the island. And then just finish milling our opponent out. Plays the island. Opponent is gonna play it out to the end. These games go long. Huntmaster, sure. Gains our opponent some life. Mill Bring to Light. Pixis. There goes Creeping Corrosion. And Cryptic on top. We mill our opponent. And pass the turn. Opponent's library is empty. And that should do it. Well, these games are quite the long grind, but we're getting there. We took down 8-Wag, took down Scapeshift, cruising through this league. Whoo! Long and grindy indeed.